So we yell, we scream, we cry, we have fights, and we have, you know, it's a teenager and a mother, and we had a lot of sorting out of things, and I had to do a lot of letting go, and I didn't do it all in good time, and there were problems.
The skills of I messages and not using you messages, the skills of taking care of feelings, and the skill of compromising, all a base that I learned at DAS and then throughout all my other schools, is something that you take to all the different aspects of your life, and you use that to understand yourself and what is potentially good and bad situations, and you use it to navigate. Often when a problem was solved, it started mending itself. It's not like the next day we were all perfect and all friends, but again, our feelings were taken care of, and so we worked our way away from them. So if it reoccurred a couple times, that would be because it was in a time of adjustment. We all had bad habits over some things that you have when you get a problem. And I think that's translated into my life. I know that if I have a problem with someone and we talk about it, they don't need to change the next day. It's okay for that change to take some time. The important thing is that they're trying. And I think that's something I got from the peacemaking at DAS. If it didn't work the first time, you peacemaked it again. And that was perfectly okay, because that's human interaction. But we kept working at it until they got better, and that's so wonderful.
School and home and work and all of these things is living, and learning is living. So I didn't want boundaries between home and school. And that was another reason why DAS was so appealing. The approach, I guess, I was looking for because of the theater work I had done with young people, and the realization that all learning is what I've been hearing, is risk-taking, and you need to be in a safe environment where your opinion is valued and where you learn to value everyone's opinion. And so theater productions would spend a lot of time sitting around in a circle discussing things. So I had an idea that this was very important. And so, because I was trying to work at it myself, but I didn't really have any support. There weren't the books and things, or I wasn't in touch with them. So we went to see DAS, and they were very welcoming and very open, and they let us come in and just spend time there. And I remember sitting out in the playground with Ann Lacey and just watching the kids in the playground and what was going on there. And the playground tells you a lot about how the kids treat each other. And one child came up to Ann and was crying, and she was telling her about the problem she was having with her best friends, her two best friends. And Ann listened, and then she suggested, well, could you go to another friend that might take care of you right now? And the kid thought a second, said, oh yeah, I could. And off she went, and this is a kindergarten child. And the concept of starting to take responsibility for your feelings and your own problems, it seemed such a sophisticated idea that she was able to communicate with this child. So I knew that there had to be a lot of background. And I guess that I was aware of these things. So when I went into the school, I think it was a little bit like what you said about ACE. I went looking for a school that I didn't think was going to be out there. My shoulders were up too. And I spent a day at DAS, and I knew that that was the place for us, and we didn't look around anymore. And I knew that was home for us.
You didn't interrupt one another. You listened to each other's ideas. You made sure that everyone felt listened to. The first thing you did before you did a peacemaking was you made sure both sides agreed there was a problem. And this is so important, because if one person doesn't know there's a problem, how can you go about solving it? So you made sure both people agreed there was a problem and that they wanted to solve it. You never went into a peacemaking not wanting to. And just to relate that to what I do in my life now, if I have a problem, I know it's important to wait to solve it until I am in a space. You don't try and push the solving right then for a quick fix solution, and that's definitely something that I learned from that. You wait till people are ready to solve it. Then before you bring them together, you talk to them individually. And you see, make them feel heard and make sure that they're ready to talk about it. And again, that comes into play all the time, not forcing the solution. Because again, like I was saying, the academics taught here and the feelings taught at desk, the process being the important part, not necessarily that you find a solution, that the process is important. So I remember making sure that both people acknowledge there's a problem, both people are ready to solve the problem, making sure both sides feel listened to, both from the peacemakers and from each other. If that can't happen, you wait to continue. If it can, you make sure everyone feels listened to before you move on to the problem-solving stage. When you get to the problem-solving stage, you do brainstorming. You think of different solutions, you weigh whether they're good or not, you make sure people feel listened to again in that sense. Then you go on to finding the compromise. But you check if you're ready. If you're not ready to go on to the compromise, you might have to go back to the beginning and start all over again. But you keep going with the people who are in the problem. You don't take precedent with your feelings as, the person doing the peacemaking. You make sure that you don't favor one person or the other over who's being more emotional. You know that if both people are in a problem, they both need to be taken care of, and a peacemaker needs to stay neutral. Something taught to us at a very young age, which is a great skill to learn. And then finally, you get to the compromise, you make sure everyone's felt heard, and basically when you go through all of that, sometimes we didn't even get to the compromise or the solution, but it was enough to be heard, and that was the solution. One problem that I remember kept coming up in class, and something that we did have a big class discussion of, was the markers, and also the toys, and the sharing of these, and the need for them to be shared, and how some people wouldn't share them and some people would, and why the people who wouldn't share them were feeling bad because the people who would, people liked them better, and that was bothering those people, and how the people who were sharing didn't like that some people weren't sharing because that meant they couldn't use all the toys. And I remember sitting down in a circle in Lori's room, and we sat down, and she went around the room, and everybody told their feelings. I remember students from an older class had been brought in to be the peacemakers because everyone in the class was involved in the problem. And they helped. Each student felt listened to, and each student felt cared to, and we did a brainstorm on the board, and we all came to a conclusion together of how to solve it. And what a great thing to do, to involve every kid in the class. The problem actually started with 2 kids specifically that day. But our teacher felt like it was something everyone was part of, and everyone should come together in the solving of this problem. And it was great because that way everyone felt taken care of. It wasn't just going to be solved between 2 people and come up with another 2 people. And we actually had a great year with the toys. And we came up with a solution that we would, have a time where each time at playtime, different people would get to choose the toys first, but that would rotate so everyone would get a chance to choose the toys they wanted first. And then if someone felt like they weren't sharing, we figured out a way to all talk about it and make sure that it, stayed good, and we'd check in. So
I spoke with Lori, and we thought that it would be an interesting experience to give the kids some creative dance movement. And so I had never made, I normally work with much older kids, so I was making new workshops. And the kids, of course, would help me, so I wasn't really worried to walk into this. And I bought some, I remember going to get magician little handkerchiefs, because when you throw them up, they float down really nicely. And so I gathered together a bunch of materials that I think would intrigue the kids, and I made a tape of lots of different kinds of music. And then I think in the style of the school, presented the material, talked to the kids, and we talked about what feelings you'd have to the different music. And well, they would move first, and then we would talk about it. And it was just, they were experimenting because this is grade 1, and it's for me, it's not a time to be teaching. It's a time for experimenting, and the kids were amazing. They loved it, and what was interesting, the boys loved it just as much as the girls. And I know you're going to speak with Dale. You might ask him if he remembers dancing with.
It's amazing, and I have such a great experience. I just think I picture those things that we used to throw up into the air, and I have all these feelings in me of this great memory, and I can't quite remember it all. But just that image brings back a feeling.
And for me too. So I learned so much from the kids, and so they asked for that workshop many times. And as they grew older, it evolved. I think because of this, the school was so open about dealing with feelings, and that feelings were so important, that it gave it was a perfect path for someone who wanted artistically to deal with them, to do it even without words. So it was a ripe place for me. So I learned a lot there.
And
sure.
Just speaking about how there's always problems everywhere and nothing is without conflict, it reminds me that we actually had a problem come up that we actually did a peacemaking of, which is that I would always sit in my mom's lap.
Oh, yes.
And sometimes the other kids wanted to sit in my mom's lap because everyone loved my mom. And when they would sit in her lap and they wouldn't let me sit in her lap, that was very upsetting to me, but it was upsetting to them that I was the only one who got to sit in my mom's lap. And so this was brought up, and it was very upsetting to me and to them. So we sat down with my mom, and we all talked, and we did a peacemaking, and we figured out how and when different people could sit in my mom's lap. So it's interesting that that problem could have come up somewhere else, and it wouldn't have been solved, and it would have grown. But in this circumstance, it was a learning experience for everyone. So it just reminded me about that.
And I was in the school quite a lot, actually, and I was kind of the school mother, right? And taking care, you know, what mothers do, kind of thing in school. And when we went home, I asked Eliane why this was so upsetting to her, because I wanted to know what she said, and she was very clear that she didn't really want to share my lap. That's her mom's lap. And I know a couple of kids would call me mom, and she didn't like that either. And I respected that, and I knew that that was that was an underlying issue of great import, as all the issues are, and no matter what age you are. So Eliane and I talked about it, and we decided what we could offer to the kids. So when we solved the thing with everyone, first we checked in with each other, and so that was a really important piece. And so Eliane and I got to talk about, well, what are the other kids' feelings? And Eliane was she has a talent, really, I think, for understanding people. She's always watched, and she was able to tell me at that time that, well, they don't have their mothers in school, and so you're the kind of substitute mother, and that the kids like snuggling in with you, and they like to be with you and have a lot of fun with you, and it's, you know, it is important to them. So then we were talking, well, what can we do, because I am your mother, and sharing the lap that's asking a lot, and, you know, what do you think you can do? And the compromise that you came up with, do you remember? It was that she could always sit on my lap, and everyone else could sit on the other side of the lap. So if somebody needed me, they could sit on one side, but she could always be there too if she needed to. She didn't always need to. And actually, Eliane, and I think that was a big learning experience just then, that you can, you're more likely to be able to share honestly if you're taken care of. So often when you're a parent, you want the best for your kid, you want your kid to be the best person they can and all that, and you forget that your kid has all these very important feelings, and the best thing you can do to help your kid is to be honest and open and listen.